Well, glory me and glory be, we've done it yet again. Here we are on the daily walk. No real, huge piece of news, honestly. There's just the general theme of the peasants revolting, right? That is more or less what is happening these days, is that as the capitalist death cult collapses into a neo-feudal structure, or a techno-feudal structure, as I've heard it called before, we are relegated to the position of peasantry, or serfs, if you like. It's becoming pretty obvious. And so you have situations like the Buffalo Starbucks unionizing, right? Which is big news because there hasn't been a unionized Starbucks in 20, 30 years. The last time that someone attempted to unionize a Starbucks, they just shut it down. Right? I expect to see a similar thing happen here, honestly. People are celebrating this unionization effort, and I think it's great that those people got themselves unionized. But to think that the capitalist death cult is simply going to shrug and say, oh, well, what can you do? We'll just go along our merry way with this unionized group. Nope. It is highly likely that that store will be shut down. It is highly likely that Starbucks will do what it needs to do in order to stymie any future unionization effort within its own company. You can see what the capitalist death cult is willing to do with the Kellogg's strike. Here you have a strike that could not be more justified. People are telling stories about how they're working 60 days straight, 12-hour days, sometimes 16-hour days, while working for a company that is making billions of dollars in profits a year, while the people are being underpaid. Like, if there is a reason to strike, it is those reasons. And what has Kellogg's done recently? Well, they gave an offer. Oh, we'll give you a 3% raise. Not like reasonable working hours, not like, adhering to labor code or anything like that. No, a 3% raise when inflation is over 6%. So, of course, the Kellogg's strikers reject it. And what's Kellogg's response? Oh, they fire everybody. If you're on strike at Kellogg's, you're now fired, and they're just gonna hire replacement scabs. And there's a heartwarming aspect to it, of course, which is that Reddit users have stormed Kellogg's recruitment website, filling it with false resumes, and have in fact crashed the system. So there's a sense of solidarity that is coming from online groups, from people around the globe. But there's not going to be any real punishment for Kellogg's as a company, right? That even in the heart of the death cult, America, it is still a bad look, still frowned upon to fire workers who are amidst a strike in order to attempt to get more from their employer, right? It's still not the greatest thing to do, but Kellogg's has looked at it and thought to themselves, well, we don't care. And ultimately, they don't care if it's going to cost them more money, right? As we've established over and over on this channel, the capitalist death cult will happily spend more money to keep people desperate and poor. That's part of the reason they're a death cult, is we know that poverty alleviation, we know that giving homes to the homeless, we know all of these things actually end up costing less instead of costing more for the emergency services and the shelters and the food banks and all of that kind of stuff. And yet it doesn't happen. Why? Because the death cult requires desperate workers. They require people who are so desperate, people who are so impoverished that they're willing to accept worse and worse conditions. And it's beginning to hit a wall. The peasants are revolting. In British Columbia, it's being reported that 50% of businesses can't find staff. 50, not 15, 50. And this is beginning to get quite apparent, especially in a place like British Columbia, where mass flooding and wildfires are destroying towns and infrastructure. It's getting fairly clear that all of this is beginning to take a much more existential turn, a much more spiritual, if you prefer, turn, where people are beginning to say, what the hell are we actually doing? What the hell is this? Why are we participating in this complete and overt, obvious madness that the people of British Columbia are witnessing literally with their own eyes the enormous, devastating effects of ignoring climate change? We are seeing with our own eyes the damage that has been wrought. We're getting reports saying that it's now over 1 million animals have died in British Columbia. And so the peasants are revolting. And they're not revolting. We're not revolting because we want to get a 2% increase over 10 years, or we want to get, an extra day off on Labor Day or something, or we want like a pizza day on Friday or something like this. Like the childishness that's coming out of the capitalist death cult. Their offerings are so pathetic and pedantic that it's hardly reasonable to even speak with these complete frauds any longer. Like, ultimately, a one-to-one strike, like the Kellogg's workers going on strike against Kellogg's, is not going to have the impact, because these people are so demented and delusional that they actually think that they can just replace these workers and move on from there without any consequence or any concern in the rest of the wider society. And so the peasants are rebelling. The peasants are in revolt. We have a leadership that has abandoned us. It's obvious. In BC, Horgan has completely abandoned the populace, 100%. There's no argument to say otherwise. Justin Trudeau, we are the only G7 nation to have increased its emissions over the last 10 years. That's an embarrassment and an abandonment. We have been abandoned by the capitalist death cult. Men like Kenny and Ford are not only abandoning the populace, but attempting to extract as much wealth as possible from the corpse that they created. And the capitalist system can't help itself. The system itself generates these outcomes because the system is not built on reason or rationale or evidence or facts or compassion or empathy or any of these basic human traits that one requires in a partner or a friend or an ally, right? Begone is this concept of loyalty, right? No, what matters explicitly and exclusively to the capitalist death cult is the accumulation of money, a false god that doesn't exist, that we invented in the first place. You can go to the Bank of Canada, you can go to the Federal Reserve, and they'll tell you all about the process of how they create money out of nothing. That it is a fiat currency that is used in order to facilitate trade, and we have elevated it to the station of God. Very straightforwardly, we worship money, we sacrifice everything at the altar of money, and we are elevating, and they argue for it. The capitalist death cult argues for it. They will tell you directly to your face. During the pandemic, they have said over and over again, sure, human lives, but money. That's what they mean when they say the economy. They don't mean your money, they mean their money, because that's how the economy is structured. They've said it all throughout this climate change catastrophe. Oh, sure, breathable air, workable land, drinkable water, you know, the base building blocks of what it is to be a human being. But money. And so now it's come down to a realization within the populace. Maybe they aren't articulating it the way that I articulate it because they lack the language in order to understand, or to articulate rather, but we understand it. We understand that we've been abandoned. We understand that if it was up to the capitalist death cult, we would become slaves. You can see very clearly that this is the case. We're already existing in a wage slave structure, and it's becoming obvious that the capitalist death cult want to pay us nothing. That they want us to become true slaves. You just have to take a look at the American privatized prison system to see the truth of this. That the capitalist death cult demands that it get laborers that it can pay nothing to. And so what does it do? It arrests huge sections of the black population, jams them into prisons, which is why they have 22% of the world's prison population while only having like 2 or 3% of the world's population. And this is an erection of the old slave system again. It might as well be the plantation system all over again. Send thugs into the population, kidnap black people, throw them into plantations, prisons. Have them make all our stuff. This is the American solution. Is it any small wonder the peasants are revolting? Is it any small wonder there is a rebellion going on? What is being called the Great Resignation is, in fact, a peasants' revolt. And we should revolt. We should revolt harder. The tiny piecemeal wins that we may get will be fleeting and temporary. The capitalist death cult will not allow small victories to sustain themselves. They will work together as a class in order to dismantle any small gains that we get. And so what we must do as a population, as the peasants, as the wage slaves, is that we must organize, band together, take to the streets, take over their infrastructure, surround the halls of power. We have to stop participating in this death machine that they have created and they defend. We have to stop acknowledging their authority. A death cult has no laws that you need to follow. And when we surround the halls of power, we should do so with the full understanding that we are redrawing our Constitution so that if psychopaths like Doug Ford or Justin Trudeau get into power, they will be toothless and incapable of not looking after the populace. It's staggering that it isn't explicitly stated within the charter that food and shelter should be a guarantee for all citizenry. It's shocking that that is not the case, and an indication of the brain rot or the black heart of the capitalist death cult. And this is going to be the next stage of North America. As the United States descends into an overt and obvious civil war, where there will be open fire on the streets of their cities, we here in Canada can choose a more peaceful approach. And that approach should be to gather together, to cease participating in this ridiculous nonsense economy that Nazi collaborators like Chrystia Freeland actually defend. We should gather around the halls of power and simply state, like they did in the 1930s, take care of us or be gone. And the mistake that the communists and the socialists made under FDR is that they permitted capital to continue existing. That when FDR was asked at the end of his life, what was your greatest success as the president of the United States? He didn't say, oh, I erected Social Security, I helped all of these people, I built a strong middle class in the United States. He didn't even say that we won World War II. He said, I saved capitalism. Which, in retrospect, with the full understanding of what that means, reveals FDR's dark, bleak, psychopathic nature. And now we are paying for the mistakes of our ancestors. And the mistake is very clear. We didn't kill the beast when we had the opportunity. We thought, oh, it's given away so much. It's given up so much of its power, but it didn't give away the shard. It didn't give away the one ring to rule them all. They didn't throw it into the fires of Mount Doom. And so now, as we begin to organize and as we begin to gather so that we may surround the halls of power in the same way with the threat of revolution, we should do so with the understanding that our goal is to be rid of this capitalist class, that it be gone from the society. Because when the capitalists seized power in the society again, they've done so with the existential threat of species destruction. And if we don't take this power from them and destroy it, then the next time they rise up, it will be even worse. This is the end of this video, guys. Like, share, subscribe. I got a Patreon down below. I could use some money. Even $1 helps. Even $1 helps. We have to be organizing against these forces. We have to rebel. We have to revolt. We have to repent. Always remember. And I think this is the reason, the heart of the rebellion. You are a quantum being. That's just mathematically true. You are a quantum being walking around in quantum energy. And that makes you just as valid as any of these billionaire psychopaths. They're spending hundreds of billions of dollars in the vain hope that you'll never realize it. Don't let them. Good luck. We're gonna need it.